So you're coming home from a long, brutal day. You're exhausted, you're hungry, and you walk in the door, and she's there. And she sees your face, and the first thing she says is, "What's wrong?" She can tell something's off, and you immediately recoil. You say you're fine, and you try to quiet down that part of you that just does not want to deal with talking about this right now. Because right now, the last thing you want is her checking in on you. You want to eat something and relax. You want to decompress. You do not want to talk about your day or talk about work. You definitely don't want to talk about how you're feeling. And yet you know that this person that you love is sensitive. And she's going to feel you pulling away even before you say anything. And she's not going to like it. And most likely, if you've been together for long enough, you're pretty sure she's not going to understand if you just ask for the thing you really want: space. So instead of asking for that space, you just muscle through. You say things like, "Nothing's wrong. I'm fine. I'm just tired." You put on a smile. You try to laugh. You try to change the subject. You try to play the part of the good partner. But eventually, maybe not right away, but eventually, things spiral. She gets annoyed with you, and you can't hold it anymore. The fight explodes, and you feel just hurt and frustrated. You feel like you're just trying to be strong, and you're doing your best to show up when you have zero energy for it. And if you've experienced any of this, first, know that you're not alone. But know that also, today we're going to look at exactly what's happening inside that scene, both for you and for her. So the next time you see it play out, you can change the outcome. Stay with me. This is Reclaiming the Gentleman. I'm Dave Lashansky. So this episode today is the first in a series of episodes that I'm going to be doing on the most common patterns that men tend to deploy in relationship conflicts. And today we're talking about the pattern of suppression, which you got a little glimpse of in the opening. And we're starting with suppression because when it's not addressed, this tendency to push down our emotions can lead to some of the most explosive problems that I see in relationships. The most intense conflicts, the ones that are the hardest to repair. Suppression is one of the most painful patterns to leave unaddressed, and so it seems like a really good place to begin. So let's dig in for a bit on this opening scene, right? So when you're coming home after a long day, and you realize that you have zero bandwidth to let someone you love in, there are some things happening right off the bat that I want to address. First and foremost, what's happening is you have reached your human limit. Because like all of us, you are a human being. You have energetic limits. And when you pour yourself into what you're doing, which is something that men that have suppression tendencies are typically really, really good at doing, right? Just an incredible strength they have that allows them to be super high achievers. You just leave it all on the playing field, right? Whether it's at work or whatever it might be, you tend to just pour yourself into what you're doing. But the consequence of that is that when you're done, right? When you're coming back from work, you're spent. Meaning your energetic capacity is pretty close to zero. And for certain phases of life, many men feel like this is a necessary way of being, right? If you want to build a family and stability for the future, you're going to have to allot a lot of your energy to your work. And that is a hard conversation to have with your partner sometimes. But doing this by choice, right? Pouring your energy into your work by choice and with intention really matters. So the first thing about suppression that really I need to acknowledge first and foremost is that you are a human being. You have limited capacity, and relationships will sometimes have to accommodate that. That is true. Now, that said, when you are coming home with zero bandwidth every day of the week, spending all of your creative juices in building mode and not in your relationship, that is going to create tension. That is going to not work for most people. And if you're feeling yourself wanting to defend that it's all for her, right? You're building this life because it's something you both want. You want to provide in this way. I want you to know that this is one of the go-to lines for the habit of suppression, right? I'm doing this for her. And this is where we get into the real meat of the episode, because what's happening here is instead of owning the fact that you are coming home spent and exhausted so often, instead of acknowledging what she's feeling in this, which is ignored and unimportant, you're defending yourself by saying that you're doing this for her. And what it reads as is just a cop-out, an inability to be accountable for the impact your constant exhaustion or your regular exhaustion is having on the relationship. And it's not really the exhaustion. Most of the time, it's the energy she picks up from you. It's this undealt with angst that she's feeling in you that maybe oftentimes you might not be fully aware is there, or at least want to acknowledge is there. And here's the thing, and this is a really critical piece and kind of the meatiest part of this episode, is that underneath the tendency to suppress that feeling, the thing she's picking up on that usually tends to lead to the argument, right? Underneath that tendency to suppress emotion is usually a lot of judgment around emotion. Most of us that tend to suppress grew up with a volatile or explosive or just very intense emotional environment. Maybe you experienced a lot of trauma growing up. Maybe you just had a man in the house who really struggled to emote, to talk about what was happening for him, who just buried it all. And many of us that had that also witnessed and were told that good men and good boys stayed strong when it was hard. That good men dealt with the pain inside them and pushed through, right? The pain didn't matter. What mattered was staying composed, dealing with it. And I think most adult men received this lesson as boys in some form or another. But if your main tendency is around suppression, it's highly likely that you internalized something a little deeper. You internalized in some way the idea that emotion is unworthy of your time or attention. And when that idea gets internalized, that emotions are unworthy or unbecoming of a man, what eventually happens when we reach adulthood is that we become strangers to our own emotionality. And what I mean by that is we usually have a strong internal reaction to things, right? Events or conversations or whatever's happening around us. But we typically have a limited menu of labels for what that big internal reaction is, right? And a lot of us tend to find ourselves kind of numbed out when that becomes too intense for us. And so you find yourself probably oscillating between anger and sadness and some kind of neutral stance, or maybe even playful instead of neutral, but struggling to identify other emotions that make up your internal state. That kind of base set of emotions that you tend to kind of flip between can oftentimes be a sign of having a suppression tendency. And we typically don't have a huge range that occurs naturally within us beyond that. We tend to really frequently experience one or two of those heavier ones when we're really struggling. And from what I see in the men in my work is usually that it's anger and sadness or anger and guilt. And here's what makes this really painful in relationship is that if you're dealing with a tendency to suppress, you're usually also doing everything you can to make sure that that anger or that guilt or sadness doesn't get put on the people we care about. Right? Many of us feel like it's our duty to protect the people around us from these emotions, especially our anger. Right? So we just try to squash that as much as we can, just bury that deeply. When we notice it, put it out, stuff it in a box, and just shove it as deep down as we can. And it is intense. That is an intense thing to do, and it takes a lot of power to do it. And this is how we end up in that beginning scene acting the way that we do, right? This is how we end up going quiet, going silent when she's asking how we're doing, getting indrawn, trying to keep her from prying that thing that we've been trying to stuff down open. And I want to acknowledge that I see the power of your intention here, if this is your strategy, right? I see how benevolent that feels in the moment. That you want to make sure she doesn't have to hold even just glimpse that part of you that you know is heavy. Because you know this part feels like a burden, because you carry it with you everywhere you go, every day, right? This is the key thing here that I think makes this episode and what I'm talking about in this series genuinely worth your time, okay? And it's this. Somewhere along the way, you were convinced that your own emotions are not useful, productive, or safe. Maybe this is a conscious thought for you. Maybe you've never even really considered it. But if you resonated with that scene in the beginning, and if you're hearing your experience in any way in what I'm talking about here, I really want you to sit with this piece, and I'm going to repeat it again, because it's really important. Somewhere along the way, you were convinced that your own emotions are not useful, productive, or safe. Now, without needing it to be wrong, I just want you to consider the following revision of the scene that I opened this episode with. So imagine coming home the way you did. You're exhausted, you're spent, you really don't want to talk about it. You're not wanting to unload all the things you're carrying with you on your partner, and you're not even really wanting to unpack it yourself. You just don't have energy for it. But instead of trying to pretend like it's not there, instead of burying it and going silent and keeping it secret inside of you, what if, when you went in, you decided to just share openly with her? Now, not dumping the intensity of what you're holding inside, but not pretending that it doesn't exist. What if you found a way to hold the reality of your experience, whatever it might be, the anger, the hurt, the guilt, the heaviness, the exhaustion, and instead of hiding it from her, you just owned it? Not with shame, not by dumping, but with self-awareness and clarity. And this is the key here, that lets her know that what she's feeling in you isn't wrong, but that it's also something you've got handled, you're aware of, and on top of. It might sound something like taking a deep breath and saying, hey, I know I seem a little off right now. It was a really hard day at the office, and I just need a few minutes to decompress. But I am looking forward to connecting with you when I'm done. And maybe you can even give it a timeline, like 10 minutes, right? And the key here is not about reading her the right script and feeding her the right lines. The key here is to let her feel into you. Not to make her carry what you're holding with you, what you're holding inside of you, but to let her feel you. To stop pretending that you're doing her a favor by protecting her from your feelings and actually just owning them instead. because you can handle this. Whatever it is you're holding inside, either you can do whatever you need to do to decompress. It's working out, moving your body, seeing a therapist, talking to a coach, talking to your men's group, talking to a friend, talking to a mentor. Maybe you do need to unload it somewhere with someone. Maybe you just need to move it out of your body. But whatever it is, you need to own it and handle it yourself, and own that when you can come to her with that level of self-awareness and capacity, with that holding the level of responsibility that every man needs to, which is that the energy he has inside of him, the emotions he has inside of him are his to handle. And she will experience them, but she doesn't have to hold them for you, right? That's kind of the key here for us that tend to suppress to really understand. It's that we're not unloading on her, but we are owning what's real, what's happening inside of us, instead of squishing it to make it easier for everyone in the room to deal with. Most of all, you. Right? And if you are struggling with this tendency in your relationship, when you unlock this art of owning your emotions without letting them leak out onto the people you care about most, is one of the best learnings that your relationship will call you to do. If you're someone who tends to suppress, I'm going to end this episode with one message that I really think will serve you to internalize. And it's this: the most powerful way to transcend your emotions is to allow them, to witness them, to practice feeling through them fully in the right space and time, so that you can actually release them, process them, instead of squishing them down and compartmentalizing. Doing this will free up your mind, your body, and your spirit, and the world around you is going to feel your renewed energy when you do this. If you're listening to this and saying, well, that sounds simple and good in theory, but it is not that easy. Let me tell you, I'm holding some heavy stuff. I get it. And this is why I recommend that every man do this, especially to begin with support, both from a men's group and from a coach or therapist or mentor. And if you are looking for that kind of support and you want to learn more about your patterns, and this one in particular, just the first and lightest lift way to explore this and to learn more is to take my free Reconnection code assessment at your-reconnection-code.lovable.app. The link is in the show notes, to see if suppression is actually your top 1 or 2 tendencies. Because yes, I think most men exhibit something like this, but it's also possible that something else is more your tendency in relationship. So go to that link in the show notes and test for yourself if this suppression tendency or something else is the thing that's most getting in the way of your relationship's deepening connection. And I also want to let listeners know that I'm opening up 4 new coaching slots for one-to-one clients this summer. So if you're interested in transforming whatever stubborn relationship pattern or breaking through that wall that is keeping you from that level of intimacy that is truly satisfying, I want you to get in touch with me at dave@daveleshansky.com to learn more about my private and couples coaching containers. Until next time, I'm wishing you a beautiful day or night, wherever this finds you. I'll be back in a week.